Hello everybody, and welcome to the first patch from scratch video, where I'll be making a patch and explaining things with my voice rather than a bunch of text on the screen. Hopefully this means I can make the explanations a bit better, easier to follow along. This is my first time doing this, so if you've got any feedback then be sure to let me know in the comments below. I've got patch notes in the description that you can look at. Otherwise, let's get started. This is the patch that we'll be making. Alright, so starting with a completely blank patch. The first thing we want to go through is the oscillator section. So oscillator 1 is going to use the triangle saw and square waves. We're going to change the triangle saw mix to about 9 o'clock, so the first big notch. You can hear that softening out the sound a bit. And then we're going to change the square mix to about, 11 o'clock, so a bit above the first big notch, slightly more diagonal. And you can hear that, the introduction of the saw wave. That's without, and that is with it. VCO2, we're not actually going to use for sound generation at all, other than to modulate the frequency of VCO1. So we're just going to turn the FM knob up to about 11 o'clock. And you can hear that introduce a lot of unsteadiness to the pitch of VCO1. Sounds alright at the higher octaves, but on the lower octaves it does get a bit messy. In terms of the mixer, VCO1 full, VCO2 off completely, and noise off completely. Just to add, all the settings for the knobs that are used for this patch will be included in the description as some patch notes. Unfortunately, the Polybrute doesn't give you actual values for the knobs, so it's going to be in a sort of 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock format, but it should get you close. Next, we're going to go through the filter section. So first up, key tracking, we're going to turn to, 230, so a little bit above, slightly pointing to the right. Master cutoff, this is just a quirk of when I made the patch, unfortunately, but that's going to be turned to 10%, and that does actually save with the patch, so you don't need to change that every time you start it up. And then on the cutoff, it's going to be just above 9 o'clock, so quite low. But the VCF envelope, we're going to increase to about 130, so it is the first sort of mark after the first big notch. So that's without the VCF envelope. As we bring this in, you get that. So we are going to change the VCF envelope settings in a sec. But first off, the resonance, we're going to increase that again to around about 930, so slightly above, pointing to the left. Distortion, so far nothing. You can add some in if you want. It does help thicken the sound out a bit. And then the filters will be running in parallel, although that doesn't actually have an impact on this patch. So far we've got this. Next thing we're going to change is the VCF envelope. So velocity, we are going to have some velocity sensitivity to the filter envelope. Going to be one sort of small marking above the first big marking. Attack is set to none. Decay is sort of 4 small marks above the middle. So that's quite a slow decay, as you can hear. And then the sustain is going to be all the way down. So a slow decay right back to where the fully closed filter position is. And then the release is one small tick above midway. You can't quite hear that yet, but you will in a sec. The VCA envelope does not have any velocity sensitivity. Attack is set all the way to the bottom, decay all the way to the bottom, sustain to the top. I think those are the default settings. And then the release is going to be at the third big marking. And now you can hear the release from both the amplifier envelope and the filter envelope. Let's get rid of the release on the filter. Just need to put that back where it was. And then finally, the mod envelope, no velocity sensitivity, attack, nothing, decay is the first small mark above the middle, the sustain is 0, and the release is about midway. and that's going to be used for some modulation later. So far we've got. Next up, we're going to do the LFOs. Just the way I'm going to do this, because they can be quite finicky, is I'll show the first one, and then the other two will be in the patch notes in the description. So for LFO1, which we're going to use to modulate both the pitch of the oscillators and the amplifier envelope, the rate is set to about, I think it's the first big notch. Sorry, not the first big notch, the first big notch past the midway. It's about 2 o'clock. The fade-in is set to, the phase, is set to 0. It's a sine wave, and then it's set to re-trigger mode. As I said, the others will be in the description below. LFO2 will be modulating the master cutoff, and then LFO3 will be modulating this triangle sawtooth mix. So we're getting a bit of that going on. So the next thing we want to do is set up the mod slots. You can do that easily by pressing a number along the top row and then turning the knob of the thing that you want to modulate. So slot 4 is going to be the master cutoff. Slot 5 is going to be VCO1 triangle sawtooth mix, and slot 6 is going to be LFO1 rate, and we're going to add slot 7 in a second. So LFO1 is going to go into slot 1, which is the pitch. It's going to be set to about 0.1 semitones. So you can hear a bit of pitch modulation in there. If I just increase the value, you can hear it in a bit more severe, but we want it to be nice and subtle, around 0.1 semitones. It's also going to be going into VCA, so that's slot 2, but the amount for now is 0. LFO2 is going to be going into slot 4, the master cutoff, with an amount of about 3%. So now there's some slow filter modulation from LFO2. If I increase the amount again, you can hear it being a bit more intense, but we want it to be subtle. All these small effects will add up to give you much more movement in your patch. And then LFO3 is going to go into the VCO1 saw triangle mix, which is slot 5, with an amount of 16%. The mod envelope is going to go into slot 6, which is LFO1 rate, with an amount of minus 63%. What that does is it slows down LFO1 and then brings it back to its original speed. So you can hear how that pitch modulation starts off slow but then speeds up. And then the other thing we can do is use slot 7 to change the amount of modulation from LFO1 into the VCA. So press 7 and then press slot D2. And then mod envelope goes into slot 7 with an amount of plus 40%. If I just do that now. There's a little bit of VCA modulation in there as well. Alright, so the last thing we set up is the effects section. So the stereo and modulation slots are both really good ways to thicken up your patch quickly and easily. So the stereo knob is going to be set to about 1 o'clock, and the modulation knob will be set to around 9:30. So you can already hear that sounds a lot thicker. If I turned off the modulation and then bring it back in, yeah, that's just sound. It's just a nice way to add some depth to your patch. The reverb we'll do next. The level is going to be set to 12 o'clock, so directly upwards. Time 11 o'clock, so not quite upwards. Type is Hall, and then damping. Set that as you like it. I like to bring it down from the maximum a bit. I think maximum is the default value. So you can hear the reverb trailing off there a bit. Again, just adds a nice bit of warmth and thickness to the patch. And then finally, the delay. The level is going to be set to 12 o'clock, so straight upwards. The time is not going to be synced to the internal clock. It's just going to be around about 11 o'clock. The type is ping pong. And if we bring the regeneration up to around 2:30-ish, you can hear that delay there. I'm going to increase the time slightly just to make it a bit slower. And there we go, that's basically the basis of the sound. You can change things as you like now. You can add some distortion or drive to the ladder filter. Helps add a bit more grittiness, I guess, but thickens it up even more. But yeah, you just fiddle around with the knobs, see what you like. All right, well, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope it was helpful. Just let me know if you've got any feedback on the video, on the format, or on the way I've explained things. Whether I've gone too fast, or I've gone too slow. Very hard to talk and play at the same time, but we're getting there. Yeah.